If you think you work hard, Larry. Do you think you make money? Larry. Do you think you're responsible? Larry. No matter who you think you are, I can guarantee you Larry is outperforming everyone. Larry, the unskilled fast food worker, is the driving force behind the economic machine of Elmore, keeping the city stable and progressing the economy of the city. Without Larry, there would be no Elmore. So no matter what impact you think you may have, this is of course nothing compared to Larry.
Please be aware, this video is in no way intended to put down any one single individual or group. All characters presented in this video are fictional, and everyone has their own life to deal with. Whatever troubles or responsibility you may be dealing with, they are in and of themselves important, and if a fictional character has many more tasks than you, this is in no way representative of the importance of your tasks. Every person makes a difference, and without a single one of you is like the world will go in a very different, non-ideal direction, had you not kept your responsibility in important tasks. Regardless of what they may be, I do not believe in any job having more merit than any other. All jobs are important in their own way. If there were no cashiers, there would be no economy. If there were no doctors, there wouldn't be that many people alive. All jobs and people are important in their own right, and do not take any of the words in this video at face value, nor these instructions necessarily specifically apply to any particular people or group of individuals. Thank you, I wish you all the best, and whatever hardships you may be facing in this video is no way intended to demean any individual. That said, let's get back to the video.
Larry works 38 jobs. Yeah, that's right, 38 jobs. Larry doesn't sleep, he doesn't have time for that whack shit. He needs to hold up the economy of Elmore all by himself. Although Larry's jobs in and of themselves may not be very lavish and outstanding, such as an airline pilot or a surgeon, without Larry working his 38 jobs, the entire economical structure of Elmore would collapse, as seen in the episode The Pizza When Larry Quits. Now, why does Elmore collapse without Larry if he's only working a cashier job? After Elmore collapses, the GDP of Elmore falls by 100% once Larry quits. Mathematically, this can be represented by the GDP growth rate if you want to get thorough. With the growth rate being this year's GDP minus last year's GDP, all divided by last year's GDP times 100. Since last year's GDP in Elmore will be some unknown number, we'll ignore it for now, but this year's GDP is basically zero. Simplifying the two terms to -1 times 100, since the top term and the bottom term are the same, we can cancel them out and get -1. We have a decline in GDP of -100%, all because Larry has quit. Now, how exactly does Larry hold up the global economic machine of Elmore? Well, the GDP of any nation is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, where C is the consumer spending, I is business investment, G is government spending, and X minus M is the net exports. We'll take G and X minus M to be both 0, since Elmore's government is greedy and doesn't give out stimmy checks, and X minus M since Elmore is lazy and never exports anything and is simultaneously also very, very hardworking. Or should I say Larry is very hardworking. Elmore never needs to import anything either, well, because of Larry. Now, consumer spending will be equivalent to the total expenditure of all consumers in Elmore, or more easily, the average C will be the average number of money spent by all consumers in a year. We'll take Elmore to have only 38 businesses, although there are many more. With just 38 businesses, an average population of 20,000 people, and assuming each of these people will continually spend money every hour, and thus the number of people spending money every hour would be 1250 people every hour, as 20,000 divided by 16 is 1250. Since these people will be sleeping for 8 hours, and we'll assume a penguin is a cylindrical object. Wait, sorry, wrong notes. We'll assume children also spend money and work to provide a living for their families. Now, let's assume that people will spend just $50 on average. Thus, the consumer spending in Elmore comes out to be around $1 million every day. Per year, this would be around $365 million per year for the C component of the GDP equation. If business investment is just spending on Larry, since he's the only necessary asset, this would lead to a business investment of $2.7 million every year for the I component, because Larry gets paid $8 per hour. And since Larry is working 24 hours per day, since business never sleeps, Larry gets paid $192 a day and $70,080 per year per business. Multiplying by 38 businesses, since Larry works 38 jobs at 38 different businesses, which comes out to a dollar amount of $2,663,040. With this, since business investment is $2.7 million, which leads the GDP of Elmore to become $367,665,040 per year, with all components of GDP added. Now, what happens when Larry quits? With Larry gone, consumer spending goes to 0. Consumers are unable to spend as there is no way to spend the money because there is no one to accept the money. Since no one can accept this money, the money itself is now obsolete as a medium of exchange. As such, money loses its very function that it was meant to hold as a store of value, and thus the economy of Elmore crashes, bringing the consumer spending down to 0 since no one is spending. And Larry's pay or business investment goes to 0 since businesses are not spending on their most valuable asset anymore either. Since the government of Elmore does not care about its citizens, nor is there any type of central bank that can help lower interest rates and do any quantitative easing, mainly because there likely is no governing body and there's probably no government spending that can help drive the GDP back up. And not only does the economic machine crash, inflation of the Elmore dollar is shot up, interest rates drop to zero, and unemployment is 100%. With this, calculating the inflation of the Elmore dollar, assuming an exponential growth model of inflation, comes out to be, in just 20 minutes, the Elmore dollar losing near all its value, and thus the current value of a rat sandwich and a kick in the teeth goes from around 15 cents to $100 in Elmore currency. And thus, assuming an exponential growth model, the function can be represented to describe inflation over time with this equation. F of x equals 0.15 times the 20th square root of 100 divided by 0.15 raised to the x, with this being in minutes. Every second, the money required to buy a rat burger and a kick to the teeth increases by 5%. And since we'll assume this to be the current market basket of goods in Elmore, by the end of the day, the amount of Elmore dollars required to buy a rat burger and the kick to the face would require around 3.14 times 10 raised to 202 Elmore dollars. Much more dollars than the entire combined GDP of the world. Although, assuming the Elmore dollar's value was the value at the time before Larry quit, as after 24 hours, the value of 3.14 times 10 raised to 202 Elmore dollars end up being basically equivalent to 15 cents before Larry quit. Without the ability to take in money, the economy collapses, which is another reason why Larry is an integral part of the economic machine of Elmore, as he is the only man who can be hired and work these jobs. But how does Larry work all these jobs? 38 to be specific. With 38 businesses, we need to find the average number someone will spend at each of those businesses. But we don't know this, so we'll just take the average of the known and multiply by some number after spreading it out equally between the 38 businesses. Knowing Elmore has a population of around 20,000 people, and that around 6 of these businesses are in the Elmore Mall, will represent all the businesses on a type of graph, with it having 33 nodes and 33 squared edges. With all this in mind, the average number of people in Elmore is again 20,000, and they all must at a maximum go out to shop every 20 days. You know, for food and stuff. With this, let's assume that the shops are open for 16 hours and not 24 hours like some other shops. And now we have that Larry must attend to 38 shops and 33 locations, since we'll take all shops in the mall to be one location, and that a person in these shops will spend an average of 31.25 minutes in them after dividing 21 days by 16 times 20. Now, to make things more complicated, let's assume Larry must attend to all his jobs in the hour every hour. Thus, assuming it takes him an equal amount of time to go to one job, he spends around 0.8 minutes at a job and 0.8 minutes traveling. The max distance he would travel is from one corner to another of Elmore, and this would come out to around 10 miles in 0.8 minutes, or around 750 miles per hour. And the minimum distance would be around 1.57 miles, assuming from one location to another, and thus the speed would be around 90 miles an hour. Although it is impressive how Larry can travel these distances in this short amount of time, it is not a plausible explanation, as Larry himself cannot make these trips with this many customers as represented before. And if we assume continuous interaction between all customers, Larry himself would have to be at 2 places at once, which would either require Larry to have cloned himself, which is possible since Larry is the highest skilled worker in Elmore, or more likely, Larry is in a quantum mechanical superposition. Solving the Schrödinger equation to determine what Larry's quantum mechanical position will be afterward in some time, we can determine many things. Larry himself is almost always stationary, usually seen on his bike, and as such is only seen when others observe him, and therefore must be like an electron in a 2D plane box. Solving the equation for an electron in this type of box, we have the energy and solution to the Schrödinger equation. As well, the probabilities to find Larry at any position, assuming he's like an electron, which describes how Larry is seen at any place. With the superposition of Larry determined, the probability that Larry is at any time can be described, which also determines why we don't know Larry's position until he is observed. Of course, observed by the main characters of this series. With already being observed, the probability of observing him at these certain positions is high, as this is the place where the highest amplitudes of the Schrödinger equation are, which perfectly shows and explains why Larry is seen at all these jobs. He has the ability to turn himself into a superposition like an electron and acts as a quantum mechanical object with insane amounts of mass and energy since he is so large. Graphically, this can be represented by this, with the large peaks representing the business where Larry will be working, and how high the peaks are represent the large probability of where Larry can be found. As a side note, we don't know where Larry is due to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. which says that we can't know an object's position and its momentum at the same time. We never see Larry moving, because if we do see him moving, we won't know his position, or rather we don't see him moving very fast. Some other notable feats of Larry would include him tanking Richard Watterson's foot and surviving, requiring his organs to be very strong to sustain around 15,000 newtons of force, essentially having a car run over his body, having a mental breakdown, and swimming across the entire Pacific Ocean. Larry also manages to never sleep, so he is a rock-hard person who doesn't need sleep to continue functioning. Speaking of sleep, Larry probably doesn't need food either, because business never eats, Needlemyer. Larry owns a few companies as well, and if these companies are publicly owned with an assumption of a nanocap market cap around $10 million, Larry's net worth just from his nanocap companies is around $20 million, assuming Larry's companies are indeed his, since they have his name in them. Lazy Larry's and Larry's Delivery Service. Now, forget about all these. Larry is guaranteed to make around $2.7 million a year. We know Larry used to be Lazy Larry, but lost the title in 1983 to the fabled Richard Watterson. Assuming all these, let's assume that Gumball's age is 12 as shown in the show, and he is born in 1999, meaning the current year is 2011. Ever since Larry lost the title, he changed from Lazy Larry to Larry, the man with severe back pain. You know, from carrying the economy of Elmore. With getting paid at just $8 an hour, as Larry said himself, and 38 businesses multiplied by 24 hours, which is how many hours Larry works, $2.7 million a year multiplied by 28 years, Larry has made $75.6 million in his career. Just shows you what a little bit of hard work can get you. Now, if we take Larry's companies to be large cap companies, if they are public companies, which is very, very, very unlikely, however, but everything is unlikely in this show, Larry would be richer than Jeff Bezos and the first trillionaire, enough to buy a country. Larry also made a movie himself and starred himself. A box office hit nonetheless, starring no one but Larry, highlighting Larry's experience in business, giving him the competitive edge in knowing what the consumers will want and like to consume as entertainment. Larry not only is skilled in mathematics and calculations, but already has an abundance of information as well, likely coming from school, which is a great reason to stay in school. Learn useless information to start living like Larry, making $2.7 million a year for just 24 hours of work, all day, every day. Larry is a big-headed individual who knows all about the psychology behind the people of Elmore and what they will consume and buy. Larry's extreme dedication to his work puts him as a certified Sigma male, securing the bag and never proposing to his girlfriend because the bread comes first. With Larry putting even the greatest business minds to shame and incorporating his abilities to be able to be in a quantumly certified superposition, as defined by the Schrödinger wave equation, which describes the probability of finding Larry working at a store, shows how Larry can be in many places at once, as well as how he can consciously change his own location. Larry has made more money than the greatest business minds of the century, and speaking of finances and business, Larry himself is the Atlas of Elmore, carrying the entire economic machine of a large city with an airport and its own services, on his own back. No wonder it didn't break when Richard Watterson stepped on it. Larry really does put all the Sigma males to shame, with his back pain carrying the economic machine of Elmore kagagillion zillion Larry-alien grind set.